Welcome to the Sellernomics podcast, sharing valuable tips and information in the Amazon and e-commerce space. Each week, we deliver the best interviews with some of the top Amazon personalities in the industry to help you grow your business. Today's episode is brought to you by GETIDA, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. And now, here is your host, Rob Stanley.
Hey everyone, Rob Stanley here along with my amazing co-host Lisa Kinski. How's everybody doing today? So we got a really cool episode today about measuring profitability on online marketplaces. We're with Nicole from Retail Bloom. We're going to bring Nicole into the studio right now. Let's get Nicole in here. Hi Nicole, how are you doing today?
Hi Rob, hi Lisa. I'm doing well. How are you both?
Hey Nicole, doing good.
Great. Yeah, so we definitely want to jump right into this. Again, we're going to be talking about measuring profitability on online marketplaces with Nicole, and she's from Retail Bloom. And we're going to jump right into the first question. So Nicole, why are brands paying attention to profitability more so today than ever before? I mean, there's a lot going on in this world, and it probably sounds like a very easy question to answer, but I bet you it's a lot more detailed than it sounds.
Yeah. So before I answer that, before getting started, I wanted to mention something really quickly. So over the last week or so, I've been bringing myself up to speed with the podcast that you guys have been putting on. And one, I just want to say thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor. You guys have built quite the community. And then two, connecting the speakers a little bit. One of the sessions with Elizabeth Green, I believe from Jungler earlier in April, spoke about advertising planning, right? And how to build out an advertising strategy. And one of her recommendations was before setting ad goals would be to understand your profitability so you know how much to spend. She didn't get into that a whole ton, but I'm hoping today's session, along with that one, we can kind of put them together and give the people who are listening and then also in the audience today an understanding of what profitability actually is and then what to do about it as you mentioned, this kind of crazy world is impacting everyone's margins to some extent. So back to your original question, I just wanted to point that out. But, why are we paying attention to it today more so than ever? Well, it's fairly obvious, right? Like at a macro level, there's margin pressure coming from lots of places. We have increases in labor for all types of roles. We have shipping increases for both inbound and outbound. Material costs have gone up. As always on e-com, every day there's more sellers, more brands, people are getting more sophisticated, and they're all investing more in e-com, which is great for the industry as a whole, but obviously not so great because it's more competitive and it's more expensive. So on the sellers and the brand side, we're trying to balance our margin goals while also maintaining our prices at the retail level, because ultimately we want to stay competitive and provide the best value to the end consumer.
Fantastic. And I also feel like, why are they paying attention to profitability, or what are some of the changes, which would be my next question. What are some of the changes that have happened with Amazon kind of to lead them to pay attention to profitability more? It could also just be the answer of like COVID, right? Like there's a problem with labor because of COVID and shipping and everything like that. But yeah, so what are some of the changes that have happened most recently with Amazon as it relates to profitability for sellers?
Yeah. So on the Seller Central side, I would kind of sum it up in a lot, but two key things. One of the big buckets are changes to FBA fees, referral fees. From January to May of this year, we've recorded at least 12 significant Amazon updates that have impacted the fee structure and ultimately profitability. So just as an FYI, these are listed on our website, but ultimately we grab them from the news update section from Seller Central. If you have access, that's where they have all of their kind of like FYI, this is happening, but then they don't really give you any detail into why or what it means for your business, right? So if you do have questions of how to digest those updates, we take every news update from Seller Central, do a quick blog on it, and then we kind of do a 101, like, what does this mean? What does this mean for your business? So if you are interested in any of these updates, just to let you know, they're on our website. You can bring them up. But some of the big ones that we've seen that have caused a bit of hesitation, concern, or ultimately a ton of work for our team to evaluate what it means is the big one being the 5% FBA surcharge, right? What does that mean to our partners on Seller Central? There's been significant changes in storage limits and then the way that they categorize products. So that has impacted what we can send in and how often, and then also how we're charged for those products as it relates to storage fees and fulfillment fees. Changes to small and light requirements, those I would say actually were relatively in the positive direction, but still something changed that we need to evaluate and understand what it means. And then some significant changes to the multi-channel fulfillment piece fees. So in summary, for FBA, referral fees, all impacting Seller Central, lots of changes to the fee structure so far this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if those continue to change. Pre-COVID, I would say that there was about 2 times per year that fee changes happened. There was one in the spring, one in the fall. They gave you a ton of heads up. And now we're just seeing them happen a little bit more often without a ton of clarity. On top of that, the second bucket, I would say, relates back to advertising, right? So I mentioned everyone's looking at e-com, bigger brands are investing more in advertising, and we're seeing that at the cost per click side. So from a data point perspective, if we compare cost per clicks across all categories in Q1 of 2021 compared to Q1 of 2022, cost per clicks are up at least 10% year over year. And if you're not increasing your retail, or if you're not doing other things, that ultimately obviously hits the bottom line. So those are 2, I guess, to summarize, 2 big things that have impacted the Amazon ecosystem as it relates to profitability.
That's good information. One of the things I was thinking, because we are talking about online marketplaces, obviously Amazon's the biggest one. I'm kind of curious personally, maybe how does the Amazon profitability different from maybe some of the other marketplaces that you guys have seen? Like, what things are people paying attention to when it comes to like not only measuring the profitability, but also keeping an eye on their profitability? Let's say like on a pay, let's go with a Shopify versus maybe a Amazon. Are you seeing the same strategies, or maybe is it different on each platform?
So I'm not an expert on like the B2C website Shopify side, but if we focus on kind of the marketplaces, and I do think things that apply in marketplaces also probably apply on the website, but I just want to throw an asterisk that if I say something incorrectly, don't write it down, please, Rob. But
I'm sure everybody will message us immediately. No, it's okay.
Thank you. So don't quote me.
This is your opinion. This is your opinion.
On the marketplaces side, I guess where we start is 1P versus 3P. Right? So whether you sell directly to Amazon or on Amazon, whether you sell directly to Walmart or on Walmart Seller Center, the fee, the margin analysis or the fee analysis that we do is fairly similar, right? Like if you are a brand selling directly to Amazon, they or Walmart or Target or whatever XYZ marketplace, right? They have a purchase price, and then there's some type of negotiation as it relates to the discount they get, accruals, co-op, and then of course you have all of the same overhead as it relates to operation expenses, shipping. On the seller side, whether it's Walmart.com, Amazon, eBay, it's typically that retail price, right, that you see as a seller. But before you get paid, they take the referral fees, the fulfillment fees, which are either FBA or Walmart fulfillment services, right? There's an advertising piece. And then there's the same kind of overhead costs that apply to all platforms. So I think to answer your question a little bit more directly, whether it's Amazon or Walmart, Seller Central versus Seller Center, the fee analysis is similar, but the actual percentages are a bit different, right? The referral fees on Walmart are sometimes different than the referral fees on Amazon. Does that help answer your question a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, when I was selling, it's been a while since I've sold, but back then it was like eBay, your own website, Amazon, and each one of those you kind of had to figure out, okay, what price can I put it at that I'm still making good margins on? Now, of course, what we always did was kind of take, okay, what is the one charging the most fees and what price can we charge there? And then of course, we're going to charge that same price on all the others because we'll just make more money on the other platforms. Of course, coming directly to your own website is going to get you the best result, right? It's going to give you the most money, usually, from what I've seen in the past. So, yes, you answered that. I really appreciate that.
I do.
Go ahead, Lisa. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can I dig into that one a bit more?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do.
So there's also this big conversation around MAP, which I know you guys have talked about in the past, especially for brands that are sold across all channels, right? So let's exclude the Amazon only brands for just a second, because those are a little bit easier to control. And when you increase your retail prices as a seller and you're only selling on Amazon by 5%, for example, to offset all of the other expenses, as long as it's still competitive, you're probably not seeing a huge issue. For resellers, for sellers that are selling brands that are sold across all channels, there's this pricing problem that happens with MAP. For example, if you're a reseller of a certain brand, you go back to, we do this as third-party sellers. Hey, brand, we saw this 5% surcharge. It's eating to our margins at a net of 1%. Can we increase the retail? But we're at that point, we're at a bit of the mercy of the brands as well as buy box, right? So I just wanted to point that out. That was a roundabout way of saying you can't just increase your pricing on just Amazon without seeing the impact to suppress buy box or other third-party sellers taking over buy box or the brand saying, hey, you're not competitive versus our competitors in the space, or you're not following our MAP policy. So there's a bit of an art to say, like, just because I see an increase in my expenses of this doesn't mean I immediately offset that at retail, even if I know I'm still going to be competitive.
Yeah, that's good information. So we're going to take a quick commercial break for 10 seconds, and we come right back. Lisa's going to have another question for Nicole. And again, we're talking about measuring profitability on online marketplaces right after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by GETIDA, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at getida.com/Sellernomics.
Yeah, so be sure to head on over to getida.com/Sellernomics. Get your first $400 in free FBA reimbursements. And once again, I have Nicole from Retail Bloom. We're talking about measuring profitability on online marketplaces. And I think Lisa had another question. Go ahead, Lisa.
Of course. And so as sellers are going through this profitability analysis, what are some of the red flags that they should be looking out for, kind of sirens going off in their head?
Yeah. So before we get to the red flags, I would start with maybe like, how do we understand what those red flags even are? So we talked about the importance of measuring profitability, but like, what are we actually measuring? Especially in Seller Central, where there's a lot of different fees, reports that you can build out of it. I would probably start with developing a process for measuring and defining what you think as a brand is your profitability. So picture kind of like a massive spreadsheet, right? Where you have your top line retail sales in a column, and then you have separate inputs that are each a column that represent your expenses. So those inputs, I would say, would be your cost of goods, right? Which go up and down, especially right now, based on vendor negotiations or wherever you're sourcing the product from. You have your FBA fees that, for the most part, stay relatively the same year over year. They haven't changed a whole ton. You have your FBA fees, that's the biggest one that we just talked about, changing, right? Understanding what that means. You have returns. So that's another big input that we consider, like, hey, our expenses are going up 5%, but our return rate that we never really cared a whole ton about is 10% of sales, right? What can we be doing to reduce that return rate to make up for some of these expenses that are going becoming more expensive than they were before? And then other overhead inputs that I would consider. So shipping inbound to FBA, for example, or wherever you're getting the product from, your advertising as a percentage of sales, your indirect cost. So that is a little bit of a loose term, I would say. So defining what indirect costs mean. As an example, if you download the transaction report out of Seller Central, you'll see like non-order fees, storage fees, return fees, like all of these other things that are just not FBA advertising and referral fees, right? That in itself should be kind of its own bucket that I would consider as indirect cost, or non-order fees, or whatever you want to call them. And then, of course, you have your own operating costs that you would know about. So carrying cost or your labor cost, it really is up to you on how specific you want to get to kind of your net income on the marketplace. But I would start by building out that spreadsheet to say, what are all of the costs that I have in order to run this Amazon business? And then once you have that, take your 2021 numbers as kind of that benchmark and say, what did I make last year by brand, by SKU, by platform? And now that I have kind of my benchmark of 2021, what do I anticipate changing in 2022? And then once you have that comparison, you can start to say, okay, my advertising costs are going up 10%. Where can I offset that? Like as an example, maybe I should be focusing on reducing returns. Does that help the first part, I guess? And then answering kind of the second, what are some of the big red flags that we typically see? The big ones, the easier ones to identify is advertising. So once we do that analysis at the brand level or at the storefront level, we then typically drill down to the ASIN level. And what we find is that sometimes up to 80% of the ad spend is allocated to one ASIN that happens to be not the most profitable SKU in the catalog, right? So maybe just shifting some of that spend from least profitable products to more profitable products, or maybe just getting more efficient with that spend and saying, hey, I spent, I'm making this up, $5,000 for $7,000 in sales. The cost per click is too competitive. Maybe I should be repurposing those dollars for coupons or investing in imagery and creative assets or testing out influencers or referencing another podcast. Maybe you want to check out the editorials that, could drive more organic traffic. Once you start to bucket those things, you can look at them on your expense side and say, what's upside down a bit and how can I adjust that for 2022, considering all of the other things that I can't control, like cost of product, increased shipping fees, all of that.
Yeah, that's some great advice. And it sounds like you already are covering some potential actionable items. Did we miss any possible actionable items? Like once they've got an analysis and they've figured out where the weakness areas are, did we miss any actionable items that they could basically like now take action on and like, hey, here's what I could do on all platforms? I mean, there's got to be some general ones and then some that are specific to either Amazon or off Amazon. I'm sure we missed something on there.
Yeah. So for Amazon and Walmart specifically, for the FBA or Walmart fulfillment services, one of the aha moments that we find is that for catalogs that have lots of children ASINs or the same product in a different color, different size, the fee will be different, even though the product is packaged the exact same way. So that's another huge red flag for us to look at by SKU, all of the retail prices that are the same, all of the products that are obviously the same, right? Except for different color, different size, and start to drill into what FBA or WFS fees are probably wrong. And again, quick plug, we use GETIDA for that, but it's also our team to like identify, hey, we've got 5 different sizes, 5 different colors, and we've got 3 different FBA fees. Like something's wrong. And those dollars add up very, very quickly, especially for items that have a lower AOV.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to give away, Lisa and I are going to be doing a presentation several weeks from now, and we're working on the slides. And one of the things that we came up with as an example is regarding categories, like picking the right category. And sometimes it's like, so I'll just give the example and we'll give away a little of our presentation. But the example was a dishwasher. Okay. So when you go to Amazon and look at the different categories, and Lisa, maybe correct me if I'm wrong on it. I think one of them was kitchen, and then the other was large appliances.
Full-size appliances.
Or full-size appliances. So in my head, a dishwasher, well, I'm thinking full-size appliance, that's like a fridge, that's usually something big. Maybe not necessarily something as small as, a dishwasher may not fall in that category. But, and this one, Lisa could probably look up and help me with, but picking the wrong category, I think it was like picking kitchen instead of large appliances, which it actually falls under large appliance, if I'm not mistaken. It was like a 7% gap between the two. Like it could cost you an extra 7% on each sale if you put that item in the wrong category. And I was just blown away. And there was many others, like in the jewelry category and all kinds of stuff. So I was just absolutely, it's crazy. If people don't do some of that research or really pay attention, it can really cost them.
Yeah.
Have you seen issues like that? Yeah.
Yeah. Another huge example that's like, so you were using that 7% as an example for FBA fees, right? Not the referral fees.
Yes, correct. So the FBA difference, I think it was like one of them was 8%, and then it was like a 15% or something like that was the other category. So not hitting that correct category could definitely hurt your bottom line by 7% on each sale. So that's a lot of money.
Crazy. Another really easy example that happened a bit. So in the last couple of years, the apparel, footwear, clothing category increased from 15% to 17%, right? And the challenge, so we have a lot of sports apparel. And at the time, when it was all 15%, sometimes we would try to get the same product in both sports and outdoor and in clothing. And they would drill down to, for example, men's performance socks. This was like, what was this, 2019 maybe? But what we found was that we had to make a decision of like, do we keep it in sports and outdoor and keep the referral fee of 15% and lose maybe the traffic that's coming from clothing? Or do we shift the products and be proactive and get all of these products that are technically apparel that are sitting in sports and outdoor at 15% over to the right category of clothing, knowing that overnight we're giving up 2% because the referral fee is going to go from 15 to 17%. So that was a choice early on. I will say, if anyone was also deciding that, Amazon started to do it on their own. Shocker, but they did the right thing, right? Like socks should be in clothing, shoes should be in clothing, whether they're a fashion or an outdoor footwear product, right? And that automatically like reduced our margins by 2%. Like that was easy. That wasn't like FBA surcharge of 5%. What does it mean to my bottom? That was like straight up. It was 15%. Now it's 17 and gone. So
that just shows you got to factor everything in, right? When you're making those decisions like that. So just real quick, everybody. So we are talking to Nicole from Retail Bloom, talking about measuring profitability on online marketplaces. We do got to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back in about 10 seconds.
Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GETIDA.com/Sellernomics.
So here's a great way to offset some of those fees. Head on over to GETIDA.com/Sellernomics. Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements. I do have to mention, not that we're here to plug GETIDA, but obviously they sponsor the show and we work there. When it comes to miscategorization, that is something that we do help with. If you get miscategorized, we are able to go back and try to help you with every sale that's been miscategorized for the last 90 days, if I'm not mistaken. And every single unit that's sold at that wrong category, that fee difference, that percentage difference, we can try to help you recover that money back. So that's something to think about. It falls right in line with what Nicole's been talking about. So go ahead, Lisa. I think Lisa had a question. Then I'd love to ask Nicole more information about Retail Bloom and herself and the company. But go ahead, Lisa.
Absolutely. Good segue into a shameless plug, by the way, Rob.
Yes, thank you.
So kind of one last question for you, Nicole, is there a way to automate this process? Either the profitability analysis, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So this actually was probably maybe a question for you guys and for the community that I had, is that for us, we started with this master Excel spreadsheet, right? And we manage over like 200,000 SKUs. So every time, one of 12 times this year that a fee change happened, it was very manual and took a ton of time. So we've since implemented this Excel spreadsheet into our dashboard, into kind of our internal reporting abilities to streamline it. So there are options for that we have, but I would be curious, and I'm always looking for software partners out there in the industry that do this, that look at by SKU, by brand, whatever it might be, sales, less costs, less Amazon fees, right? I'm familiar with one of the companies that we used to use, but for us, knowing that we have brands on Amazon and Walmart, 1P, 3P, we haven't found a software out there yet. And if there is one, please let me know, that kind of consolidate it all into one place. So over the last 12 months, we kind of anticipated this happening. So it's the one thing that we've had to build internally and invest in developers. But let's say that you don't want to do software. So one question is, if anyone's out there, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you guys because we're
leave it in the comment section. If it's after the live, and you're watching this video online somewhere, please leave a comment down there. I'll get a hold of Nicole and let her know what the suggestions you guys have. So
amazing. But as a backup, I would say the fewer the SKUs, the less work it is, right? So then you can do it more manually. But that's why it's important to find your kind of source of truth Excel template that you rinse and repeat, right? Where you finalize it and you say, this is how I'm going to calculate this every single time, every single quarter, whenever I do this analysis. And you have it as like a calculation where you can quickly say, okay, FBA fees went up 1%. I changed my FBA total from 25% to 26%. And it autofills all the way down for every SKU, for every brand, whatever it might be. So I think if you can't invest in a software and you aren't needing to have that like scalability, I would at least at a minimum do a master Excel spreadsheet that you can save as over and over and date it with when you're doing that analysis, and then make it based on formulas so that you don't have to redo every single field manually. You can just make the changes to the top as a row. And I know this is probably a little hard to understand because I'm talking and I'm not showing it, but I would say if you guys want one, I can just send you a screenshot of what that spreadsheet looks like. Rob, if you have another link, I can link out to one of the blogs that have that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll give information here shortly on how to contact Nicole and get a hold of that if you're interested in seeing that. But what I'd like to do is let's talk just a bit about yourself, Nicole. Like, kind of how did you get started in kind of just e-commerce in general, and what brought you to Retail Bloom? And then feel free to tell us about Retail Bloom and what kind of services you guys offer.
Cool. So I am, I head up our sales and marketing, and I'm one of the co-founders. So Retail Bloom was actually spun out from our previous parent company, Aliva Stores. And Aliva Stores has been, it's a third generation company, but over the last 20 years shifted completely to e-com. So they have 15 of their own websites, a big Amazon presence. And then Retail Bloom was established. I was the first employee in 2015. And since then we've completely spun out. We have over 55 employees. We work with over 80 brands. But our concept is a full service, I guess, provider for marketplaces, right? I mentioned, we manage Vendor Central, Seller Central, Walmart, Amazon Global, eBay, Walmart Canada. But I think that what makes us a bit unique is that we do both 3P as the seller. So we work with brands that say, I don't want my own seller account. I don't want to sell to Amazon. I'll just sell to you. You handle it for me. So that's one piece of our model. But then we also help brands who want their own seller account, their own vendor account, manage that business. So regardless of how the brand or the seller sells on the platform, we do brand protection, we do content, advertising, inventory, which was a lot of this discussion, right? So we have an inventory team that helps with replenishment and fee analysis. And then on top of that, we have some creative abilities. So helping our brands with imagery and video. So that's like the core of what we do. And then I would just say, outside of being unique in the sense of being able to work with brands in different ways or however they sell on the platform, we also have a pretty extensive tech stack that I'm biased, but I think is pretty sweet. So some of it we've developed in-house because, again, we haven't found a software provider out there that's able to provide us the type of data in the way that we need it. But we also have amazing partners, just like you guys, right? Where we leverage those software partners to help us run our business. And one of the challenges that I see in the space is that in order to run Amazon, Walmart, you need people, and you also need a tech stack of all of these things to help you manage the business, monitor pricing, PIM tools, advertising tools. And I think that's kind of what makes us unique, is that when someone partners with us, they don't have to go to 10 different vendors. They can come to us and leverage all the software that we have.
So Nicole, and hopefully I'm reading this right. When did Retail Bloom, when was it founded?
2015.
2015. Okay. I think I saw something different on, so I wanted to make sure I got it right. So 2015. So you guys have been around a while. I mean, I think I started selling on Amazon in 2013, but I had started on e-commerce in like 98 or something like that. So, and it was very different back then, right? So what kind of advice could you give between maybe people that have been selling since 2013 or 2015? What kind of changes have you seen or that Retail Bloom could help with that maybe people just haven't, maybe they're trying to decide about outsourcing this or going to somebody like your guys' company. What sets you apart that would kind of drive them, that maybe they've been around a while and they want to now step away slightly from it?
I'll answer the first, like, what do I
Sure.
see in the ecosystem before why Retail Bloom? If I could go back to 2015, like, as we all would, right? We would just blow up in advertising because it was 25 cents a click and everything was great and no one knew how to do anything. And it was
margins were nice.
Yeah, it was great, right? 15% referral fees, you could send into FBA whatever you wanted. So I think that the biggest shift that I see from 2015 to now is that a couple of things. Obviously, it's harder. It's more competitive, but also the bigger brands who weren't ever in the space, and if they were, they didn't consider sellers as their number one competitors, are getting a lot better. And that, I think that's obviously great for the consumers, but they're investing a whole ton into advertising. They have the right resources. Sometimes they can scale a bit more. And I think that's the biggest change that I'm seeing, is that back in 2015, when we worked with our, larger brands that were on other channels, they were worried about their direct competitors, who they thought were direct competitors in traditional retail channels. And it took us a while to say, like, that's not who's taking share from you on Amazon. These are not who you should be worried about, right? And let's start thinking like sellers for you guys in order to stay competitive on Amazon or Walmart or whatever marketplace it might be. And I think we're seeing that shift a lot more, which is great for the brands, but for the sellers, now it's more competitive, and that's what's causing a lot of the cost per click to go up. So I think that's the biggest shift. I think it's just a different way of thinking about it and different challenges. And then I guess the second question, why Retail Bloom? And I alluded to it a little bit, is that we traditionally work with brands who are on multiple platforms. Like, we don't typically partner with sellers who are only on Amazon or only on Walmart, mostly because they are already able to move very quickly. They understand how to increase organic versus increase spending more in advertising. So I wouldn't say, not that we don't want to have conversations, but I don't think we're always a great fit for the sellers that are only on Amazon and Walmart. Our unique is when a brand has all of these different channels. Amazon and Walmart happens to be a piece of their business, and they're looking to optimize that and scale that more. And I think that's where Retail Bloom fits.
I love it. That's perfect. Yeah. So why don't you give everybody a little information on how to contact yourself, the website and everything like that. And I'll throw that up on the screen also for everybody who's watching visually. But if they hear the podcast, let's give them some reference points.
Yep. So retailbloom.com is our website. If you submit literally anything through the website, that funnels back to me. So I will find it. But you can also email us at info@retailbloom.com. That is also forwarded to me. Right now, fortunately, our sales and marketing team is fairly small, so that's why all of it is going through my inbox. So it's very easy. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Like I said, email address info@retailbloom.com. Happy to connect. Always looking to just network with others in the space. We learn so much from sellers, really. Like, even the podcast, Rob, like I mentioned, going through a couple of those, I'm like, wow, we need to add that to the list. So it's always great. And if I can help the community in any way, I would love to do so.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Awesome.
Well, Lisa, any last words before we close out?
No, I don't think so. Just Nicole, thank you so much for your time. Are we going to see you and your team at Powwow next week? Which I guess for when this comes out, Powwow will have already happened. But for the live audience, will you be there? It will be during.
I am not sure. How was that answer?
Excellent. Well, hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And once again, it was Nicole with Retail Bloom talking about measuring profitability in online marketplaces. So retail, RETAIL, Bloom, BLOOM.com. Be sure to visit retailbloom.com. And of course, if you want to email, it's info@retailbloom.com, and Nicole will get that. And you're always welcome to post questions. Like I said, even after the video is over, more than happy. If it's a question I can't answer, I will send Nicole an email and have her give the answer and post it in the question section. Nicole, thank you again for being on. It was a lot of great information. I learned some new stuff, and I love it when we do that. So thanks again for being on the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Sellernomics podcast. Special thanks to our sponsor, GETIDA. Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GETIDA.com/Sellernomics. Be sure to join us again next week for more great tips on how to grow your business. And thanks again for listening.